Media personality.
And I'm all audible.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, it's always good when there's a scramble when we're coming on the air. I always enjoy that myself or whatever. Johnny Million, how are you this fine morning?
I'm doing good. I'm eating snacks. There goes Hal. Hal left.
No, I'm
He's
here.
back.
I didn't go anywhere. I was gonna bail on you entirely, but I was like, you know what? I should just let Johnny.
No, you don't want that.
I'm not. Well, I don't know. I think you are this week above all others, ladies and gentlemen, people of the chat, the lovely sparklers out there, the people who listen to Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide, even the streamers, and the people who enjoy as well, twitch.tv/It's Johnny Million. All of those people, I think, would know if they've spent any time here at all with the dedication and the intention that they have paid to this, that they would eventually, they would know, based on the stories of this week, that if there was a week that Johnny Million could just take over and handle the sort of the political arc of things, this is the week. This is the day. This is
Really?
the Saturday of all times.
Really? This week?
Yes, because it started off with a PR gaggle
I'm
put
listening.
together by RFK and one of his friends in semi-right-wing media that devolved into screaming and farting. I don't know if you've heard.
No.
Yeah. So, when you know those
That sounds like my
editorial-
stream.
I
Like
know.
the entirety of my stream devolving into screaming and farting.
Well, the great thing is your guitar's so loud that people just think it's tone. But this is a true story. So, and it got worse, by the way. Let me preface this by saying that RFK Jr.'s week started with a man screaming and farting and yelling while he was farting, "I'm farting."
Wait, he yelled, "I'm farting"?
He yelled, "I'm farting."
Now,
while
was
he-
his partner there going, "Please tell me when you fart? I want to know when you're farting."
No. I don't think it was.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it was like sort of an SBD safe word moment.
Okay.
I think he was just so riled up. And by the way, the argument that broke out was about like vaccines and every horrible thing that arguably RFK Jr. is trying to avoid. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to move away from being an anti-vaxxer. He knows he's got that label. He's trying to push back against it by, being I'm for the science, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And the science says that, the COVID, we'll talk about COVID-19 separately, but vaccination is a key to a longer life. And the idea that this guy wants to cut them all off, I suppose. Well, I can't read into what he's saying because you would have to just be awful as a person. You'd have to be an awful in a targeted way. But that's the deep reason. That's not the Johnny Million side of things. Johnny Million,
Okay.
You could have handled all this issue just on that alone. Just
Easily.
Yeah, just reading the article. That's 2 hours right there if you can get a word out in the giggle.
Between my
Then-
giggles.
Then it takes a really sharp, dark turn. Now, let me know if you can hear this. It's a little quiet.
It is ethnically targeted.
You hear that? Did you hear that?
I hear perfectly, and that's a really dark turn.
Yeah. So he's talking. This is RFK Jr. speaking at I guess another one of these editorial board kind of meetings. I don't know if they say directly. He was at a press event at an Upper East Side restaurant, which I think nothing. If you're going to unveil what he's about to unveil, there's only two places where you could, I guess, do it in New York City: the Upper East Side, or I suppose the Upper West Side as well. But the Upper East Side. I mean, if you want to talk to Janos Poha, you go to the Upper West Side, the Upper West Side, or Mott Street. These are the two places where the only places could have been worse, arguably, is Sunday at a Chinese restaurant in New York City, on Christmas. Here we go.
Because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and you know, the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, chat says I have a lot of echo.
You have a lot of echo. I'm sorry. You're. I will try and remedy that.
Okay.
I think I can go for it. So give me a check for you, Johnny. Yeah, now I can't hear you, which is hilarious. I see. We'll figure it out. 1 second. So let me be abundantly clear. I turned you off. I made you silent for a second.
Check.
Yep. So
check.
The
check.
Monitor only. There we go. So
check.
It's hard to. It's super hard to unpack.
Can you hear me at all, Hal?
Yes, I can. I hear you.
Oh, okay. Oh, I was going to say that somebody in the chat had a good question asking why they sound like Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, he has vocal paralysis of the vocal cords.
Oh, well, there it is.
It's a physical problem, and I don't know quite what the cause was in particular. I don't know that I've ever heard of. I've heard competing stories, but that effectively it's caused by paralysis of the vocal cords. One of his vocal cords doesn't move, is the idea, and the other one does, and therefore it creates a shaking factor because he's always stabilizing against the one that's kind of permanently in position. If both of them were in permanent position, it would just, I guess, you just whistle all the time. You know what I mean? You would just be able to make tones.
Yeah,
you wouldn't be able to. Yeah. So, anyways, that's the least of his worries. Believe me, if he did not have that physical malady, his clear-voiced explanation of what he just said would have cratered his campaign instantly, if it hasn't already. I mean, arguably, this is from today. Yeah. So that this piece of video/audio, and it is video, by the way. He's on video, and the people around him at this very, very fancy Upper East Side restaurant are staring at him like, oh dear God, here he goes. There's a bit of and the woman right next to him is kind of on the team, it seems. She's nodding in agreement, but everybody else is kind of, there's this are you really saying this in front of me? Okay, yeah. So let's break down RFK Jr.'s idea around the origins of COVID-19. Yeah. First of all, we're well beyond lab leak. We're not talking about somebody got a wild disease and it was in the lab and then it got out. Or that somebody was messing around, in a positive form where they're like trying to do gain of function, where they're like, wow, we have this really contagious disease. If we could raise the contagion level but lower the viral impact on the body, you'd effectively have a delivery system for God knows what. You could do genetic therapies. That's what most gain of function stuff is about. It's not about making a disease worse. It's about this kind of thing, using it as instead of taking a vaccine, you would just get a cold that would be an inert version of the disease that's going around, and you would catch it naturally like everybody else, and you'd have natural immunity to it, but you wouldn't have any of the physical impacts. That's the theory behind a lot of the bigger gain of function stuff. That isn't obviously bioweapon stuff, which is another conversation. But the vast majority of labs that have engaged in it or thought of it as a function, I tell you what, this is too big to do before the break. We got to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to break down just this, like the stack of crazy that's going on. I'm Hal Sparks. This is Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. Well, actually 50% less because he had an echo for a minute. We'll be back.
We're clear.
Cool. Thank you. Let's see if I can. Oh, this is just. Try to, and I don't know, it's very strange today, but I don't know why my headphones decided to just give up the ghost.
That sucks.
But we'll see. We should be fine. I'll manage. But you sound fine, and I hope if I'm not echoing too bad. It's just a little,
Not to me.
Okay, great. Now, this is the part I want to bring in. So here, whoops. Bring this in, and we'll go to here. And you're not Philip. I will fix that. 1 second.
Thank you. Oh, speaking of Philip, I actually have to leave right as the happy ending begins.
Okay. We can make that happen.
Okay.
Studio mode.
People to go, places to do.
None of my business, really.
Yeah.
Move this over here for later, and then I will hide.
Coming back in 20.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and hi chat room. We'll get to you in just 1 minute. I'm setting something up, and I was chasing down this weird audio flop. One of these days, I'm gonna have a piece of rack gear that solves this. I just know it.
You gotta.
Attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay. So, this is Johnny Million. You'll be happy to know. And if you're welcome back, we're in the moment in RFK Jr.'s campaign where he's trying to hand the ball off to Marianne Williamson and give her an unforced error that she can act upon. We'll see if she's able to do it. But so this is actually video of the meeting that I'm showing on infotainmentwars.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and whatnot. This is video from the alleged what I think the New York Post calls it raucous booze and fart-filled dinner at Tony DiNapoli's on East 63rd Street. So
it sounds like you're reading me the specials.
Yes, that's right. It's a 7-course. And by the way,
is this one of those things where I don't get to order? I just show up and pay $280 and they bring out 7 courses of things I don't really want.
Right. No, they just, and as they dish it out to the people next to you, someone's butt is right in your face going. So,
oh boy.
All right. So there's a picture by the way, on this New York Post story where it looks like RFK is breaking wind all over this guy and he's covering his face. That is not what happened insofar as I know. Although I cannot rule out that he was not SBDing the entire time and that the other guy literally farted to cover. That's entirely possible.
You can never rule that out ever.
No,
anywhere.
Absolutely. So This is from the article. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy dished out wild COVID-19 conspiracy theories this week during a press event at an Upper East Side restaurant, claiming the bug was genetically engineered bioweapon that may have been ethnically targeted to spare Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people. Now, if you listen to RFK's explanation there, you can tell he is trying to politically dog whistle his way through this. He is saying it is ethnically targeted to go after Caucasians and black people specifically. I don't know what the theory is that they left out Hispanics. Perhaps the racist cabal of Jews and Chinese people that he's alleging exist to concoct this serum of death needs them for workers or something. Is that what we're gonna? How does this Illuminati conspiracy work?
With that.
Yeah, I mean, can you think of another explanation why they would?
Maybe he is a big fan of their cuisine. I don't know.
Taco Tuesday? It could be.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, they don't want to lose.
Which all just circles back to the fart
We'll wipe
issue.
out all the white people and the black people on the planet, but we don't want to lose Taco Tuesday because
Right.
even our goodness and our moments of sparing people is racist. So, all right, amazing. Now, what the New York Post points out, and I think right in the first paragraph, what everybody else notices, which is not that he is creating this, he's expressing this conspiracy theory and a belief that this during a question and answer portion of the evening, after he's given his formal remarks, and he decides to just go off on this. And he finds his way there on his own. Nobody is tapping him on the shoulder, and we'll get to why RFK and Trump have the exact same campaign staff in just a minute, because that's my other theory. They're the same people. Jill Stein, by the way, runs RFK's campaign. So, I guess it's really hard to find people who haven't worked for Vladimir Putin directly in staff these days, because nobody knows where Paul Manafort is, but this is the next best thing. So his argument that this disease was targeted towards, it was designed towards killing white and black people, is a way of, I guess, him crafting his wording to not just storm right into what he's saying, which is that Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people collab to create a disease to wipe out everybody else on the planet. That I don't know where you come to any other conclusion in the end of this.
No, that's the vibe I'm getting.
Yep. What impetus does either of those groups have if they created it on their own to spare the other, unless it was a collaboration targeted at wiping out everyone else? It's just like, okay. The other thing is, beyond the idiocy, the racism, the anti-Semitism, the like xenophobia, I guess you would call it. I don't even know if it qualifies that. Just like this concept of Chinese people as monsters in general, with the Ashkenazi Jews. I'm honest to God, his running mate isn't Mel Gibson at this point, but we'll get to that in a little bit. It could be what a ticket, huh? And their line could be, their bumper stickers could be, "We're too old for this bleep." Anyways, I'm just working it. I'm trying to tell you about it because it's horrible. Horrifying. It's horrible. It's so, okay. So the story he is telling is that for some twist of fate, these evil bioweapon scientists worked specifically to create a bioweapon that leaves Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people alone, and that they released it into the world because he doesn't believe in the lab leak. He thinks it got out on purpose. Now, maybe he thought that, to be charitable to him, let's just imagine a future where he's like, gosh darn it, we've made this version that kills everybody but Jews and Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people, but we need a couple of more updates to get rid of the Ashkenazi Jews and just save Chinese people. And then it leaked out before they had a chance. That's the most charitable awful that
Yeah.
one could come to in this nonsense. His quote is directly, COVID-19. There is an argument that it is ethnically targeted. Okay. The argument that it is ethnically targeted is...
Wait, did he say there is an argument that it is? That's
Yes.
just that Fox News separation.
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
Are saying.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying this. I've heard this floated around, and I'm going to say the rest of this stuff as if it's fact after I've given myself that I've tapped the side of the pool, right? So there is an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. Okay, two things. One is to believe that you have to believe that only 4,000 Chinese people were killed by COVID-19. And I am here to tell you the number is at minimum 20 million people in China have died from COVID. At minimum. It is the center of the greatest death from COVID on Earth. There is an argument that as many as 60 million people were killed. But they don't bother to keep track because they overcounted their population by 140 million. So at some point, how would they even know? So minimum 20 million people died in China by many estimates. It's like they tracked it through multiple different sources. People's phones, which people use to pay everything from their gas bill to, their subscriptions for, what streaming services I guess they have and that kind of stuff, and buy food on the street. Those 20 million phones shutting off, gone forever. And it's like your social security number over there. You don't just switch like we would. So 20 million people do that. Maybe 2 million of them make sense. That's 17 million. And that doesn't include all the people in the impoverished areas and rural areas that do not have hospitals at all, and people just passed away. A lot of them elderly, a lot of them children, and never counted as population. So the absurdity that he believes this horrifying notion on the idea, part of his information is the false numbers from the Chinese government about how few deaths they had, is awful on two fronts. He manages to be awful on two fronts. The other part of this is that he goes, it attacks races disproportionately. One of the reasons why black people, especially in the United States, were disproportionately impacted by this were a higher prevalence of pre-existing conditions and lower healthcare availability in their areas. So, and a tendency in some cases to look at the expense and go, I'll just suffer through it. And by the way, the storyline that it's just a flu, and that that they were floating this idea around that there's a giant Caucasian conspiracy to kill black people, so they just want to get you sick so they can give you a shot that'll eventually sterilize you, and all that stuff that was floated around, that the Russians, by the way, used around AIDS treatments in Africa when the UN and the United States and everybody was trying to stop the spread of AIDS in Africa, or malaria. Anytime they try to do that, the Russians jump in there and go, this is just them trying to get a needle in your arm that'll kill you and sterilize you so you can never have kids, and your kids won't have kids, and they're just trying to depopulate the area, so you probably shouldn't take that pill, and then they die of malaria or HIV. So this has been a strategy the world over, and it's pretty crayons and hammers. It's pretty blatant and pretty stupid, but they count on it to work 3 to 5% of the time, and that's enough. If it can kill 3 to 5% of a population, it's a win, right? Didn't cost you anything; it's just noise. So these kind of stories have been used in a multitude of ways, and that so the idea that it affect, and by the way, targeted to attack Caucasians and black people, and the idea is that America had more deaths than anybody else. Because we're bigger than the other countries. They didn't count the EU as a chunk in that regard. And secondarily, no. That's like saying, since Italy was hit so hard, it was designed to kill Italians. And in the United States in particular, we had a lot of red staters who just wouldn't get vaccinated or wouldn't take precautions because they bought the story as well. Yeah. They didn't die because the disease got them at a proportion that was higher. Their belief systems led them down a dark alley.
Yep.
which is, by the way, RFK's, I mean, you could argue it's his campaign. His campaign is lead America down a dark alley. I swear there's nothing dangerous here. Just follow me. I locked my keys in my car. Can you help me? And walk down this dark alley and get thumped on the head. And that's entirely what's okay. And then the final sentence of it, COVID is targeted to attack Caucasian and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. Now he follows up with saying, we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted, but there are papers out there that show racial or ethnic differential and impact. And this is like, there are papers out there that show racial and ethnic differential. Yes.
There
impact
are
because
there
of
is an argument.
Yes, because of medical, like availability of medical services, financial reasons, cultural reasons where people don't trust medicine, caused by jerks like this in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when we come back, I'll lighten it up a little bit because at some point we've got to deal with the fact that
They don't like the gas.
we'll be back.
We're clear.
Thank you.
Yay.
So
I have to reset my
yeah.
audio thing here.
In
I'll be back in
between
2 shakes.
bites, yeah, I heard it, so it sounded good. I think it's okay. In between bites of linguine and clam sauce, that'll get you. I think linguine and clam sauce.
Wait, did you heard all this?
Oh, I heard it. Absolutely. Never had one lesson. Did you put that together? Are you working on a new record?
Yeah. It's a thing I'm working on.
It's good. The irony is that you could probably post that on TikTok and wearing DJ headphones, and it would be viral and pay for a house. Just he doesn't even know the mic is behind him. If you don't do that today, all right, put it on, make a reel out of it or something. Put it on TikTok. Or I mean on Twitch. All right. Warned of more biological weapons in the pipeline with 50% infection fatality rate that would make COVID-19 look like a walk in the park. We don't know that the Chinese people. We do know that Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. Okay, they're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so we can target people by race. Who? We. He's saying. So okay, first of all, you are not going to be able to excise Russian DNA to the person based on people in look. All right, I'm gonna get mad, and then I gotta wait until we come back because this is gonna make this dude. He's a habitual line stepper. Yeah. All right. I'm holding back, chat room. I like because we gotta. Because, good Lord. Let me scroll down to catch up with you guys.
Somebody's asking if your T-shirt is from Real Genius.
It is, of course, from Real Genius.
Yeah.
Yep. I have an original one that I got when I was in high school that I cut the neck, and it was a ring shirt. So and the shirt, the rings shrunk faster than the rest of the shirt. So I cut it into a tank. Yeah, like, I look like a wrestler with one of those, when they tie,
Ultimate Warrior strings.
Yeah, they tie stuff around that. You know where that's from? I don't know if we're back with Chicago yet. Chicago's, but
is it Muay Thai?
No, and I can't hear Chicago. So are we back? I don't know. I want to make sure. I just realized. I think
we're back in 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
All right.
Okay.
That if you work out with a tie on like that, it creates vascularity and helps the muscle grow. So they started doing that and they just left it. Welcome back, chat room. I had to jump into the chat room at infotainmentwars.com and on our Facebook page and of course at twitch.tv/HalSparks and all you lovely people to give me a break because I was starting to get enraged. I was starting to get because okay. it started at farting, which I'm fine with, and then it got just increasingly worse. and I have to say, I'd seen the clip, I'd heard the audio, but reading further into what RFK Jr. says in this, there is even more his disdain and his opinion of his fellow human beings might be the worst thing about him. And it reeks of somebody who lived a protected, political dynasty life. There is, there is a virulent form of disdain. I just disregard for regular people or people who just do their jobs, or, anybody who isn't in some sort of this is a great example of quote unquote elite thinking. And here he says, this is the further quote. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. Okay, first of all, no, we don't, and no, we're not. The Chinese, if they are developing quote unquote ethnic bioweapons, I'm here to tell you that the CCP has no compunction about using them, and they would have tested multiple ones already on the Uyghurs and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it would have already happened. They wouldn't go through the world's problem. It's, oh my God, over near our border with Kazakhstan, there was an outbreak of this thing. We had to quarantine the entire area, and everybody's gone. That's what would have happened.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, because of CRISPR-Cas9 and the availability of genetic modification of any kind of biological material you can practically think of for about $900 in your garage, you can make real trouble for the world. And so the idea that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, the only reason they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars is because they're discovering it and containing it. And if they are developing a bioweapon, what they're going to find eventually is that there's enough shared material in crisscross in a lot of people's biological background, in their genetic background, that it won't work. Otherwise, by the way, white supremacist groups and other groups like them across other racial spectrums would have tried this as well. And they always fail because humans have too much alike. Now, especially the ACE receptor idea that he has, which is just childish. So, and I guess it's just, maybe he's trying this idea of, it's all horseshoes and hand grenades. It's good enough. You might take out some of your own, but it's worth it to get rid of everybody else. If that's what he said. Okay. But listen to the wording he's saying. This is a man running to be president of the United States. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons. Okay, first of all, how do you deal with trade or at the UN or with how do you do anything but create a military blockade around a country that you allegedly know is doing that if you're president of the United States? Mm-hmm. Understand what he is saying about this. We know they're doing this. Okay, well, if they're doing this, the only thing the rest of the world can do with the rest of their money for the rest of time is to build a dome around China so this stuff doesn't get out, apparently. Because what are you talking about? Okay, secondly, like the idea, I mean, it's farcical beyond measure. But then following it up with, we are developing ethnic bioweapons. The idea that America, the most racially diverse country on the planet, and is with Joe Biden in office and Ketanji Brown Jackson on the SCOTUS and Kamala Harris as VP and the ethnic diversity of and Vivek Ramaswamy running to be the GOP nominee or whatever, is going to roll the dice on some sort of racial purity germ. And nobody inside there is going to go, wait a second. Am I the only non-Ashkenazi Jew in this room? What the heck? Like the idea that a 50-year project or something to develop ethnically targeted white supremacists, black supremacists, Chinese supremacists, and especially when he gets to this part. And this is the part that, I mean, it's broad base. If the idea that you're creating bioweapons on targeting people on the color of their skin, not their specific ethnicity, as if the racial diversity in Africa is uniform because everybody's black. That means they're the same black, or Europeans are the same kind of white. Like there's no difference between Italians and Irish, and like it's just like it's so stupid. But he goes, they're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so we can target people by race. Okay. Does anybody think this jerk has ever gotten a 23andMe done? Or
exactly. The first thing I thought was, well, I've got some of that on my 23andMe.
Yeah. So, a lot of people have a bunch of both. And
by the way, I also have like 0.5% Italian, and I lean into that when we have Italian food.
Oh, I know. You just like you start threatening people and offering favors.
Yeah, nice kitchen you got there, Bambina.
Right. You're like, all right, I buy that 0.5%, and then the rest of you are just being a jerk. So yeah, honestly,
yeah, that's funny you should say that. This is 99.5% just a jerk.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the Joe Roganing of the political discourse in America. That's exactly what this is. Because look, are there real threats out there? Are there super secret programs and super secret programs where they're like, what if they have one? Well, what if Mr. President, we cannot have a mine shaft gap? Of course. And have there been things, programs in the United States and in other big countries that have risen and fallen? And by the way, have foreign countries and the United States reacted to myths of each other's stuff, like the psychic research allegedly the CIA was doing and stuff was in response to stuff that the Russians were floating that they were doing, right? Yes, of course. But those programs, all of them, last about 2 years and then they're shut down. And there's usually, in the United States anyways, there's often hearings about them, or they are quietly swept under the rug because they were a fit of madness in an otherwise sea of relative bureaucratic normalcy. This, though, is just his idea. I mean, this is basically Jim Caviezel, Sound of Freedom. There's a cabal of adrenochrome drinking people out there, and that's who runs the world. I
forget about adrenochrome every time I'm off this show.
That's a shame.
Then I come back on, and I'm reminded it exists.
It's a fabulous laxative, apparently.
Really?
And it's course 3 at Tony Ginoli's or whatever on the Upper East Side. Okay.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there. Let's be. Obviously, Jewish organizations blasted Kennedy this week for his remarks. I can't imagine why. I have to say, like, this in any normal world, this would be the thing. This would be this would be the reveal. This is where he was believing his own press and popularity, and he finally started saying what he's really saying. Without he dropped his political filter for a second. He forgot where he was, that he was at a press event on the Upper East Side in New York, trying to coax donors into backing his insurgent campaign against the guy who just passed an infrastructure bill. He forgot, and he went back to, and Trump does this occasionally too. He went back to, RFK Jr. will tell you the real deal at a dinner party if you get up close to him and buy him a drink. And I have to say, the worst part about it for me is that there are reasons to be concerned about the CCP's use of weapon technology and other stuff, and their lack of security around a lot of that stuff. Their sort of slapdash approach to very dangerous things. That's a genuine thing. There's a reason to look back at things the U.S. government has done over time and go, we don't want to repeat that. So any sense of repeating that needs to be dragged out onto the carpet and castigated quickly before it gets a toehold. That is a long way from just flippantly and dropping over a dinner party on the Upper East Side that I'm pretty sure the Jews and the Chinese concocted this thing and set it loose. Because that's where the Reddit threads in support of those ideas and the Stormfront articles and the BitChute video makers, the fringe of the Rumble crowd are going to take this video and go, see, I told you so. And ironically enough, the biggest result from it will be that they and those close to them will not get vaccinated or take health precautions when the next illness is floating around, and they will die unnecessarily. And you and I will miss out on the opportunity to argue their stupid ideas about Davos and the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset and blah-de-de-blah-de-de-blah. I will say again, I wish no ill on anyone, and I want you to be alive so I can point out to you how stupid your ideas are.
Right.
Human to human. If I'm arguing with you, that means I think you're a person. I don't argue with dogs. I don't argue with cats. I argue with other human beings. And if I have total disdain for what they are, I'm not dehumanizing them by calling them an idiot or what have you. There's a certain amount of there's honor amongst dueling ideas. The saddest part of this is that RFK is just going to kill people that are like-minded to him, which is not the greatest get out the vote campaign.
No.
It's right up there with Trump's.
Neither is all elections are rigged.
Oh yeah. Oh, well, let's go. Let me show you a piece of I'm going to play a piece of magic audio from Trump when we come back from the break. That is an example. It is proof positive, I think, that he doesn't actually have a campaign. That this is him running against being prosecuted and him trying to fleece his crowd for money one last time. It's not a real campaign. And I'm fairly certain this proves it. We'll come back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Bittner will be joining us in the next hour as well to talk about updates from Ukraine. There's a lot going on there. Obviously, after the big NATO meeting, there's been a lot of movement as well on the battlefield. We'll talk about that as well. We'll be back right after this.
Nice.
Okay. Let me go back to here. Oops, no. Go back to here. There you are, Johnny May. Let's see. I'm going to grab this just in case. It'll be on here. Let's see. Uh-huh. Okay. So I'm going to have to give a bit of a backstory on when we come back on what Trump is being asked in this next piece, and it's enormous. Okay. It's a big story through a big swath of the country. It's a big story in Texas. It's if you're running for office, there is no excuse to not know what the hell's going on here. And like I even knew rudimentary knowledge about the Iowa connection when just from what this lady said, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I thought he would turn it into an attack on the Green New Deal stuff. And it was a layup. It was almost, well, I'll save it for the air because it's going to bug me. Yeah. I'm aggravated this morning. Just the nerve. Oh, Johnny Million.
The nerve.
Thank you. It's and by the way, let me see if you can hear this.
I'd like to know how you can help us in Iowa save our farmland.
That's pretty quiet.
CO2 pipeline.
Yeah. Well, you know we're working on.
You hear him, right?
I know I'm only on 1 day a week. I get it. I'm gonna have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So, one of the things you put a campaign staff together for is to help you prepare as you go from region to region, state to state, county to county, so that you can tailor your message specifically to the people that you are encountering in that particular group. You have a grander national thing, but you want to encourage the local voter, all politics being local, to come out for you because you get it, and you get it down to the level that affects them as a human being. That is singularly the purpose of retail politics. And Trump's he has been spending less on ads online and elsewhere because he doesn't have any money, but that's another story, than DeSantis or I think 2 other of his rivals. And what he has been doing more of is the retail politic, allegedly. They set up these events, these fake Waffle House trips, and these trips to, where he didn't know what a blizzard was at Dairy Queen. He went to Dairy Queen in Iowa as if it's not a chain, which is the weird part. Chuck Grassley does the thing. I think their headquarters might be in Iowa, and that's why.
Maybe.
But it's, unless you want them to donate, unless you're trying to get the Dairy Queen people, I don't know, Mr. and Mrs. Queen, to donate to your campaign, I don't know why you wouldn't just go to a local ice cream shop, because it's the dairy farmers in Iowa that matter, not just the ones that are on contract to provide stuff for Dairy Queen, right?
It does seem like a weird decision to hey, let's go to the big corporate monarch of,
Well, I mean, let's not pretend Waffle House is a local endeavor. It's a regional thing. It absolutely is, but it's not, what's remember the place on Walker's, like on Green Bay in Chicago, the Pancake House, I think it's called. Is that the place we used to go to all the time? You know what I'm talking about, with the big German pancake?
Richard Walker's.
Yeah.
Richard Walker's. Thank you.
Yeah, Walker's Pancake House is on, we used to go there in high school a lot. It was like Homer's in that place. That was like more money and more like
Homer's.
Specific time of the day. Homer's was like all the time and always is. By the way, we're not getting any money, but go visit Homer's. Is it technically Kenilworth or Wilmette? I don't know. It's right there on the road. I think it's Kenilworth technically.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, Hal Vickery says that DQ is based out of Minnesota.
Well, then I don't know what the hell is going on. Thank you
for
clarifying that, Hal Vickery. Bless you. So Trump is in Iowa. He's in Council Bluffs, and he's doing this thing right now because they're trying to do more retail politicking. Now, again, he should have had to do this the first time he ran, and he didn't, and he won. And he didn't win the popular vote, but he won the Electoral College, and so it haunts him. This has been haunting him ever since. The Electoral College, win was not enough. People just don't like him, not in the number that they liked Hillary Clinton, and they like Joe Biden even more. And it's driving him nuts. So he wants to have these moments where he's glad handing and meeting people and blah blah. And he goes into a Dairy Queen in Iowa and goes, "People want a blizzard. What's a blizzard? Nobody knows. Nobody likes it when it happens in New York City, but apparently down here, he doesn't know what a blizzard is." Okay, there was a famous moment when George H.W. Bush went to a grocery store when he was retail politicking.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that? And he'd never seen the scanner at the grocery store in his life. And they'd been in use since he was vice president.
Oh yeah.
And I got also Blizzard runs ads on Fox News and CNN and all the sites that like you can see that you know what it is just from watching enough television, which we know he does. So he's just thick about it, I guess. Anyways, not as thick as a blizzard, but look out. Anyway, so he walks in and he's like, everybody know what's a blizzard? What's a blizzard? We don't know. Everybody get these blizzards, okay? And then give them to us. And he acts like he's picking up the tab when it really is paid for by, it's a campaign event, so the campaign pays for it. Because technically speaking, if he personally bought them, it would be a campaign contribution that he would have to report and all that kind of stuff. So, but he gets to play big shot without actually doing, we'll get everybody's in the place where it's gonna blah. And now he also is coordinating these things. He's gathering everybody together. So his staff, the one thing they do for him, and it's really not, it's more like how you handle a Kardashian than you would handle a campaign. So they just fill the place with sycophants, people who like him.
That seems like that would be a good film strip. Boop. How to handle a Kardashian. Boop.
Boop. Yeah, right. You know, a lot of times in America, sometimes you'll stumble, little Johnny, across a Kardashian in the middle of the road. Anyway, so here's what to do. So this is him in Council Bluffs, and a woman asks a question, and I will reiterate what the question is because I think it's kind of quiet. But she is asking about what are we going to do about these CO2 pipelines on our farmland? Hold on.
I'd like to know how you can help us in Iowa save our farmland from the CO2 pipeline.
She goes, how you can help people in Iowa save our farmland from the CO2 pipelines. Now, a couple of things. Because of the industry that is in buying carbon and selling carbon credits and all that kind of stuff, there are companies, and Exxon just bought a huge one in Texas. I think it's called Denon. They bought this company that does CO2 pipelines. So instead of the CO2 coming out of the stacks at energy plants and other places, you can liquefy the CO2, pump it someplace, and bury it in the ground, just like oil. That's what oil is. It's sequestered carbon. And us taking it out and burning it releases that carbon back into the air. So one of the ways you can get it back in is you capture the carbon dioxide, which is how you bond it together. You liquefy it, you put it in, and you pump it in the ground. The problem is it matters. The geography matters. So you can't just pump it into like soft soil. You have to find a particular strata or an area where there's a lot of like tar or liquid, like unusable oil, that kind of stuff. And you pump it into there. And then over time, it just kind of coagulates and it just stays. So you're taking the carbon out of the atmosphere, stopping it from going into the atmosphere, and you're pumping someplace else. Well, since you can't do it right there are more and more pipelines taking this stuff from the big plants to places in the country where it can be put into the ground harmless, right? And again, oil is way more toxic even than the liquid carbon dioxide because it disperses pretty quickly if it releases. But it's toxic if there's a leak of these pipelines, it can be dangerous. It sucks all the oxygen out of the air, and engines don't work, and people have problems breathing. Some people have had around a couple of these breaches of these pipelines, they had people who have neurological problems allegedly from the lack of oxygen they had temporarily because it was like think of it as like those halon extinguishers. I'm playing slapdash with it because we want to catch up. There's a lot more to it, but you get the general idea that it is. But the idea is that it's based on the idea, we don't want this carbon going into the air, so we're liquefying it, pumping it someplace, putting it back into the earth. You know what I mean? You'd think maybe don't take the oil out in the first place and find something else, and so you don't have that process. I know. Simmer down.
No.
So, but
it's like the idea of protecting kids in school is not to have gun reform, but to put up bulletproof walls in the school.
And more guns. Give the teachers guns. So that because God knows you and I and other kids like us at school wouldn't have found them. So let me real quick. Here he goes. This is his answer. This is his answer to what she says.
Yeah. Well, we're working on that. And we had a plan to totally, it's such a ridiculous situation, isn't it? But we had a plan, and we would have instituted that plan, and it was all ready. But we will get it back. If we win, that's going to be taken care of. That will be one of the easy things we do.
Okay. That is he has no idea what she's talking about. It is abundantly clear. That's just vape. She yelled this thing out. Everybody responded to it because everybody there knows, which his staff should have known that one of the things in Iowa that they're having is specific to Iowa and specific to this area of Council Bluffs, and why this woman probably drove, 50 miles over there to yell this at him, is that they are in Iowa. They're talking about using eminent domain for these pipelines. And there are farmers who are saying, I don't want this. I don't want to have a giant CO2 pipeline running across my farm. If you want to rent the space or pay me for it for the transit, that's one thing. But using the law to just make this happen and by the way, support for it is very low, and it's more of a Republican thing supporting Exxon, who just bought this big company. So that does the pipelines. So she's yelling at the wrong party, for one, and he has no idea what she's talking about, which means nobody on his staff gave him any kind of warning about this huge issue that is happening in Iowa right now that affects the farmers that he wants to brag about giving $28 billion to. It's so him. We'll be back right after this. Philip Bittner will be joining us at the top of the next hour, and we will be taking questions from the chat room. We'll be back.
Dumps. They call them dumps. Big, massive dumps. I had a beat off.
In his sock drawer.
Sorry. We have new ones, too. There's CSL chased down this one.
We have to slam it.
What it?
He was saying, he was trying to tell everybody that they have to overwhelm voting in these areas. I don't know. He needs so many votes they can't cheat is where he's going. And he goes,
we have to slam it. We are going to be a country no more. I actually think it will be a country no more.
He means America.
Who wants people coming in from foreign countries?
I don't know. I guess you. So you're canceling the Live Golf Tournament? Good Lord. What a jerkweed.
He can't wait to marry him. Hey, there's Phil.
Hey, there he is. Okay. Oops, and I just realized.
Welcome, Phil.
Just in time.
It's for you, buddy.
Oh, that's not you endorsing JFK, is it? Please tell me, Philip, hold on, I'll bring him up in a second. And then we can hear him. And 3, 2, 1. There he is. Okay. We'll pop this in there. There he is. What's happening,
Philly?
Turn that off. There you go. Can he hear me? Can he hear me?
I don't know. I like his little headset.
I do too.
He might be talking to us, but we never know.
Let's see. He's using the right one. His headphones, I don't see any listed. So on this end, you guys do know I can see your headphones, right? I can see what mic you're using and what.
Does mine say Shocks?
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Yeah, it says, Shocks, open run by Shocks Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See, they're open. You can see my ear hole.
There he is. Wait, I hear him. I hear him make a noise.
Hello,
he didn't hear us.
Hey,
we
buddy.
hear you.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear us at all?
I heard you. I heard you up until just a minute ago. So.
All right.
Can you hear this?
Just gonna keep.
No,
I don't.
He can't hear that. That's my check.
Hello.
Yeah.
Don't
so
make me
we
check
hear
again,
him.
Phil.
It's on your end, Phil. It is. I promise. It ain't us.
I don't hear you.
I know. Hold on.
It's your fault.
We hear you. It's on your end. We're sending audio. I mean, it may be one of those things where sometimes there's a
test.
They don't like a gas.
Check it too.
Yeah.
Testing.
Break and
1, 2,
come back.
3.
Yeah. Let's see. We hear you. but you can't hear us. I don't know how to, like, we all need to learn sign language. That's all there is to it.
Yoo-hoo!
He's getting calls. That's Chicago.
I can hear you. We hear you just fine. You sound great.
I feel like I just got insurance.
Ooh, good boop boop.
Nope.
We're back in 10 seconds.
Okay. We got about 10 seconds. We all right.
Change that.
Yes. Hold on. I'll switch back to us for a second, and we'll get John. We'll get him in here in a second, and let him know to. Let's see.
Can he reconnect maybe?
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at HalSparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Plus Facebook.
Hopefully he sees the thing.
Progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Well, hopefully Phil will figure out that he can't hear us because it's because of headphone issues on his end, I think, and audio coming out of his thing. We'll figure out that issue in just one second. I think he's going to rejoin. That should solve it, perhaps. Wake his system back up. It's one of those situations where you got to let your browser know that you're okay with what's happening to it.
Yeah, browsers.
You know what I mean?
I work in payroll support, and a lot of it's done through a browser system, and it's browsers are trying really hard to be helpful, and more often than not, they're messing things up. They're holding on to things. They're holding on to old pages so they appear fast.
Yeah.
But they're not fast. They're just holding on to the wrong employee that you're trying to pay.
Right. Well, as soon as Phil's able to hear us, I will bring him on with us. But he seems to be waiting for audio. Like it's there he goes.
Oh,
okay.
He's reconnecting.
I think he finally saw the message. Okay, good. So obviously, lots of stuff going on this week. The big noise being about whether or not and on what timetable the Ukraine will join NATO. Biden is very much the hardliner on sticking to the standard that you cannot join while you're at war. And there's a lot of very obvious, smart reasons for that that stance. The main one being is that it gets really easy for a violation of the Article 5 to happen accidentally. And in this particular case, Phil's back. I see him. We'll see if he can get in here. We'll see if he can hear us. It's his. Let's see. There is no headphones listed on his, which is very strange. So that's what his issue is. We'll get him. We'll get him. But that, I have to say, considering how much, there's been a real PR push around this war. There's been an awareness that this is as much in many ways a battle with folks, about, commitment and understanding. We see no headphones listed. There you go. Way to help out. Yeah. Yep. So I'm still working on Phil, but there is a constant storyline around Ukraine that we, in the West and the United States particularly, are taking baby steps in our support, even if we should have done it much quicker and much more directly early on. For two reasons. One is not to quote unquote overly provoke the Russians into doing something violently stupid beyond the violent, stupid stuff that they have already done, but also, for our own people and our own ethics and our own standards about not just going, hey, let's jump with both feet into the next conflict that shows up, or make it look like, the attack on Iraq that George W. Bush did, where after all, they tried to kill my dad. That whole story. Where a lot of people think he was just reiterating the Iraq war that his father started, that Biden as vice president, wanted to get out of Afghanistan and was thought there should have been a much stronger response to the 2014 attack by Russia on Ukraine, and that he gets another bite at the apple. That's the that's the theory, that they're trying to avoid playing into. And understand, after what we talked about with RFK Jr., there's plenty of conspiratorial thought out there that you can't fight it all off. You won't be able to. You just won't. That's not a possibility. But the big broad strokes, you can make sure that you've got some safe. Hey,
make sure
look at that.
you've got some safe.
Oops, I got a feedback now.
Look at that. Oops, I got a
hear you
feedback
now.
now.
Well,
That's weird. Yep, Phil, we're getting back there. I hear you talking.
Phil, we're getting back there. I hear you talking.
okay, I can hear you.
But I also hear me back, and also.
But I also hear me back, and also.
Johnny Million is showing you. He's describing. For the radio
This is what I'm
audience.
bringing to the show.
It's right. I can't tell you. You can just guess the word he's showing to Phil. You really can. Okay, so there are a myriad of
Oh,
Oh,
how about now?
Well, let's
we
see.
hear you.
Yep, we hear
Now?
you. Can you hear us?
Yay! I can hear you.
Yay!
Excellent. All right.
Good,
so I
and
think
there shouldn't be any reverb. There should be no reverb.
I agree. There should be no reverb. And ta-da, we fixed it. Yay! Phil, there
Yay.
he is, ladies and gentlemen. Phil Bittner joining us from Ukraine,
Look at him.
and he's in Kiev in front of his Olga poster. So what I was saying was
And I
is that
saved this up for you, Phil.
Yes. Oh, it's just, he did. He really did.
Classy as ever, Johnny.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
Ooh, classy. I like that word.
Well done.
right. So one of the all right. Can we get back to being grown-ups now? This is serious time. I've only got 4 minutes before the break. You children. To quote David Carradine, I hate working with children. So one of the big story this week was about whether or not Ukraine will join NATO, whether that's a smart move or what have you. But the main reason that Biden is pushing back on it is the main reason that is one of its structural elements that has kept it afloat and functioning all this time, which is nobody joins while they're at war. Nobody gets to buy health insurance once they find out they're sick. That's essentially the argument, and it makes a lot of sense because if you could, people would jump in whenever they're in trouble and turkey their way out. Once it's over, once the threat has passed or something, or just sit in there and go, they'll take care of us from now on, and be one of the low-level contributors in like Turkey. So, and again, I have to say, everybody's supposed to contribute 2% of their GDP. If Turkey's in the hole, do they have to give anything? I think maybe that's part of the trick. So, what has been the response overall? I know that Zelensky, was. He was very loud about the fact that he thought it was ridiculous that there wasn't a specific timetable. But the timetable itself plays into Putin's propaganda, so that's exactly why.
Well, they're a little bit salty about it here because what they want is that what they're upset about is not that they didn't gain membership into NATO. What they wanted was more definitive language that would express the West's support and protection, so that there would be a path to where Ukraine has defensive promises from the West. Because the argument that they make here is ambiguity and not coming down categorically in support of some sort of partnership is only going to embolden Russia. That's where they come from. Look, nobody is this doesn't break anything between the two sides. They're still firmly in alliance with one another, of one way or another, of one form or another.
Right.
But I'd be lying if I said they weren't a little bit salty about it and a little disappointed.
Well, I think part of it is how it's been portrayed as well from a messaging standpoint, and the idea could be that they're meant to get salty about it because that saltiness pushes back on Russia's narrative the entire time. Meanwhile, Finland, with double the border that Ukraine has with Russia, is on a fast track and is and Sweden's already in. I forget which one got in, and then the other one votes later. So
Sweden gets in immediately. Finland is part of a map, part of a process. I'm
right. And
so
so
you're making me second guess myself, but I'm pretty confident about that.
Right. And so this, like I said, the saltiness actually plays into the messaging that the Biden administration and NATO leaders themselves play into, that this was not the intent. The idea that like 8 years and change ago, George Bush said, they're going to be in NATO eventually. And that's what set this off all later. 9 years later, Vladimir Putin goes, wait a second, I need to attack right now, is an absurdity beyond measure. But that's for another time. But but allowing, throwing any logs on that fire at all is a mistake, is my point. And I think that's what the attempt by both the Biden administration, Anthony Blinken, and the heads of NATO, that's their position in that regard. I think the most shocking thing is Turkey, is Erdogan being okay with it, and this footsie problem that Putin has, because that's that everybody's like, NATO's distancing itself from Ukraine, which isn't the truth. They're like, yeah, as soon as this is over, we're gonna fast track it. That's obvious, but we're not gonna set out a plan right now which says that we know exactly when this will end and how, because everyone will think we're gonna nuke Russia at that point, so forget it. But Turkey, them playing, Putin losing support from Erdogan is a bigger piece of news, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Turkey has done a couple of things recently that has upset Putin. Not just the NATO issue and supporting the two new members, but also releasing the defenders of the steel plant in Mariupol, who were supposed to stay in Istanbul. These are Azov brigade leaders, of course, which is the big boogeyman for the Russians.
Right.
And the Turks let them go, so they're back in Ukraine, and they'll be joining the fight. So, it's just been a couple of things actually that Erdogan has done recently that shows that, and it also shows he's not afraid of Putin. That he's, I mean, we kind of saw that at a summit recently. What was it, last year, where he kept Putin waiting?
Yeah.
That would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. So Erdogan is really sticking two fingers up to, or a special middle finger up to Vladimir Putin, and it's a heck of a thing to see, because
we got to take a break.
History between Turkey and Russia.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to discuss that a little bit more, because I think there are parallels between Erdogan's decoupling from Russia, specifically. Between Erdogan's decoupling from Russia and the United States' decoupling from China, the balancing act that goes on both politically, economically, and militarily, there will be moments along it that you can read any which way you want, but the trend overall is very clear. We'll be back right after this. I wanted to discuss that because it's a huge issue, and it covers two parallel areas that we talk about a lot on the show. We'll be back. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I think audio wise we're okay for now. There's a little bit of like slapback that happens in rotation. I think that's a matter of, that's not your fault. That's internet. That's just the world.
Okay.
Had a nice chorus effect to it for a minute.
It did. It had a very Elvis-y slapback to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm looking at one thing. Let me put this away real quick. Did you see RFK's statement that I talked about earlier, Phil?
I did. At some sort of dinner or something, him talking about how COVID-19 was targeted against everybody with Ashkenazi Jews and Asians.
Yeah, Chinese. Nice. Well, not Asians, Chinese people.
Chinese.
That's specific. Yeah. Secondarily, he said there that we, the United States, are collecting Chinese and Russian DNA to make bioweapons. Which I mean, yeah, the amount of
We're back in 20 seconds.
yeah.
Thank you, Chicago.
Yeah, thank you, Chicago.
It's depressing.
It's just bizarre. Like right about the time he was like, "I know science. I understand science. I'm great at the science. I know the science." And then you're like, "You just said one of the most idiotic, unscientific things."
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh, Philip Bittner, the conversations we have during the break that you can only see at infotainmentwars.com or twitch.tv/HalSparks. Watch later if you're just in your car. Join us. But the idea that we're going to support Ukraine against Russia and protect those people, and that at the same time, according to RFK Jr., we are collecting Russian DNA to create specific bioweapons, as if that wouldn't wipe out all the Ukrainians we just helped, because I don't know if he knows.
Just so.
It's amazing. All right. So, but before we get off, believe me, we will careen into a ditch about that stuff. There are, when you look at Erdogan's relationship with Russia, I think it parrots or mirrors in some ways, or maybe even inverse mirrors, what happened in Kazakhstan. Because there has been this, where Kazakhstan is moving closer to China because of its geography and where its oil and gas is going, and it knows in the future that's where it's going, but its economic status and future beyond oil and gas lies with the Europeans. So it is making a lot of very balanced decisions, Kazakhstan is. And the hardest problem it has, of course, strategically, is the fact that it has a bunch of Muslims right on the border with China who are very angry at how the Uyghurs are being treated. And if Kazakhstan stops monitoring its border on its side, a bunch of those people are going to storm into Xinjiang and do some real damage, Afghanistan style. And that's the biggest hoop they have to jump through every single day on a strategic level. But they are definitely moving away from being a satellite of Moscow and avoiding the same mistake and ending up a satellite of Beijing. Just being a functioning country, more power to them, awesome. The same thing can be said of Turkey in a lot of ways, which has been playing fast and loose, but, like one hand in Putin's pocket and one in Europe's pocket this entire time. And I have to think that part of their long-term strategy, if they have any brains at all, has to do with the fact that they are at the port of the Black Sea, they're at the opening of the Black Sea, that the Ukrainians need to get their goods, services, oil and gas, minerals, grain to market. And so a partnership between Turkey and Ukraine long-term is financially amazing for both countries because of just geography and output and shipping yards and all kinds of other stuff, and the deep water ports that Turkey has and all that kind of stuff to do these shallow. Ukraine could actually have a smaller, sharper fleet of transportation ships if they made a deal with Turkey to transfer goods from one to the other in deeper water ports and that kind of stuff. That's 100 years of health, wealth, and wonderful for your citizenry if you're thinking that way. The future with Russia is not so bright. And Erdogan has to know that he's got a bag of sand, and he's trying to take the gold idol and swap out this bag of sand. It's the exact same that Kazakhstan is doing, just there's a bigger scale on it and more players. And economically, Erdogan's a moron. But strategically in this might be his good suit, where he understanding what they have to get out from under and on top of. That makes sense.
Yeah, well, and I think he also sees the way things are going, and he knows that Ukraine has a future, and Russia is gonna go through some real upheaval after the end of this war, after they lose this war. So. I think everyone knows who better to hitch his wagon to. If you can presume that Turkey is driving the cart, or is actually got the goods in the back. But regardless, anyhow, the important thing is Erdogan clearly is putting in his lot with the Ukrainians. He has openly insulted Putin in public. He has, he has supported the NATO decisions. He has released the Azov prisoners. He has openly slighted Putin at summits. he knows that Putin's living on borrowed time.
Right. We just had the Koreans commit to millions of dollars support the
just here today.
Yeah.
First
and
visit
then,
of a
South
rock
Korean
Republic
premier.
of Korea. Yeah.
Which is
Historic.
impressive. And then Germany has committed $19 billion worth of military goods over the course of the next 5 years to Ukraine, both for the current conflict and to rebuild stuff after the fact or develop stuff there. Again, tech being what it is, the Ukraine has a future in that area, and German manufacturing, they know that at a certain point, one of the biggest moves that Germany did was to cut off the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and say we're done, which, again, we'll crack that egg again about the pipeline story if we want to at some point in the future, but it's unnecessary. But the German manufacturing has been on a downturn. And one of the ways you reinvigorate it is you operate with high trees, which Ukraine could be. They got factories, absolutely, but they could, as far as the tech of something, and then having it built in Germany is a win-win because of the industrial base already exists there, and some of the industrial base in Ukraine has been destroyed by the Russians or undermined or allowed to rust during the Soviet Union and then afterwards. So this seems like the long game plan from NATO is beyond this kind of argument about what the short-term, shock joining of NATO will suddenly be once this is over, or once it reaches a certain point, and more about Europe has already moved past this war. They don't know how long it will take for Russia to lose, but they're making moves under that premise.
Well, yeah, because it's obvious. I mean, it is 100% obvious that Russia is going to lose this war. It's going horribly for them. The only question is how long, and what do things look like at the end of the fighting, and do they hold on to it? Do they get any advantage from this illegal war? And by that I mean the land bridge. Do they get to hold on to Crimea? I don't think either of those things are going to happen. I think we are headed back to 1991 borders. Because you'll just encourage the Russians to keep coming back.
Right.
But the question of who wins this war is already done. It's just, what does it look like at the end?
Right. And how long does it take before it goes? And it
how long
and it
does it take?
drags
And
and
how
drags
many
and
more
drags
people
and
have
then
to
pops. Right. Well, that brings me to this other point, and before we get to the break, you and I, well, for those people that don't know, if you go to infotainmentwars.com and subscribe, which I hope you do, it's my YouTube channel. Philip joins me on Wednesdays, sort of a midweek report on what's going on in Russia and in the Russian-Ukraine war. And one of the things that we marvel at on occasion is the death toll and the amount of gear destroyed in the course of this war on the Russian side, which is an ongoing tally. Phil, by the time you and I speak next, the Russians are currently at 237,180 dead troops. By the time we speak on Wednesday, the Russians will have lost. They will have crossed the line of losing 250,000 soldiers and personnel in this war. 250,000. They will hit the 250,000 mark before you and I speak on Wednesday. The Russians lost somewhere in the order of 9,000 people in 10 years in Afghanistan.
And it helped to bring down the Soviet Union.
Yes, it did. That's all it took. Now, because we are in a propaganda world where information travels, far faster and boggles the mind longer than it used to, they've been able to drag this out. What's the layout of the death toll if this goes on another year?
And cynically, we don't even really know the exact number of how many have died in Russia, because they're hiding that. They've got these mobile crematoriums. They're denying family members that their loved ones have died here, not because they're trying to, I think, hide the death toll, although that might be part of it, but also because they don't then have to pay out a pension They don't have to pay out. If your loved one dies, you get a different kind of pension than if he
Well, there's a very strong
if he's lost in action.
there's a very strong argument to be made that the Russians put out stories about defectors and people surrendering to cover the dead, just so they don't have to pay
And we
the
know,
families.
we speak. I have spoken to for months. I've spoken to Ukrainian officials who say that they try to exchange prisoners back, and they won't take them for that very reason.
Yep. And they don't and they want to keep the people they have because it's a lot of times it's women and children. That's another part of it. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this with your questions. Johnny Million's going to gather.
I got a bunch already.
Yeah, we got a bunch from the chat already. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Follow Philip Bittner, 1L, 2Ts, and of course at Johnny Million.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and for those who are watching, at the special ending, I've got show and tell time.
Oh, nice! He's got a happy ending.
Yay.
Nice. We are going to go see Mission Impossible at 5 o'clock today. That's my happy ending.
That'll be fun.
Yep, we're family outing to the movies. That'll be 2 in 2 weeks because we went and saw Raiders.
Neato.
Yep, and we're gonna go see this one. It's like summer. It's weird. It's like July in 1993. We're gonna go see.
I will have to leave before the happy ending today.
I know you got it,
no.
which is my other happy ending.
Yeah, that's
All right, well then, close your eyes. Close your eyes, Hal. Put your hands over your eyes. Put your hands over your eyes.
I walked away.
Holy shit! All right, thank you for showing me that.
All right,
oh my God!
Coming back. Hide it.
Okay,
hide it.
put it away. Hide it. Hide it.
Hide it.
It's
Is
worth
that cool
it.
or what?
Yes, thank you for showing me that ahead of time. Don't blow it in the
Well,
chat.
I couldn't let you.
Oh, you jerk.
I couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't leave. I couldn't
You're
let
gonna
you
love
leave,
it,
Johnny,
Hal.
without seeing that.
Right. Is it bigger than a bread box? Animal,
No.
vegetable, mineral, or all three?
Kind of all three. All right, the chat is being very good, saying, Phil, that's cool. That's nice. Nice. Just leave it at that.
Thank you, chat. Thank you, chat. Let's not spoil the surprise.
Coming back in 20.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chicago.
Captain Terp said technically vegetable, Phil. Pretty true.
Attention, attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
All right, so I could jump right in and start blathering, but I don't want to miss out on our questions that we might have.
Yeah.
So Johnny Million, what do we have? Let's start in at infotainmentwars.com. By the way, subscribe everybody. If you do YouTube, if you have a YouTube account and you YouTube and you do the YouTubey thing, stop on by. Go to infotainmentwars.com. Subscribe. We're trying to get our numbers up. We're moving. It's moving. We got 50. We're closing in on 53,000 subscribers. And unlike my competitors, they're real people who actually watch the show. And we'd like you to be one of them. So subscribe, especially if you already watch. But there you go.
So a question from Nick Rich. Ask Phil about the Kiev Cat Cafe. Have you heard of this?
The Kiev Cat Cafe, yeah. I've been to the one in Lviv, and I've got a vlog on my channel with the one in Lviv, but I have not been to the one in Kiev yet. So I might have to do that. But yeah, the Lviv one, the vlog is very cute. So I recommend going and take a look at the Lviv Cat Cafe.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So one from Jay Fernston. With so many human rights violations, is it possible to remove Russia from the UN Security Council? And how permanent is permanent in this case?
You know, I've heard that argument. That's not That's not new. I mean, it would take a lot to do it, obviously, but there is that argument that, I mean, the whole idea of the UN is to avoid conflicts that Russia has just started. So
I have an idea. I think I know how this can be handled. I have a good idea. I think this will actually work. And I think it's actually close to what might be the reality around it, which, of course, is that structurally, when Russia loses the war and Vladimir Putin steps down or they're shuffling around, it's such a mess that they technically aren't the Russian Federation anymore because other countries will vie for their own borders back, Georgia and the like or whatever. So the Federation documents that make up whatever constitutes their form of government, including the Duma, and whether they have a prime minister and no president and how their elections go, that's going to be up in the air. And that wouldn't be the same Russia. At least on paper, it would not be the same Russia that it is now. So you could bump them off because, like the USSR, they don't exist anymore. They're working it out, but right now they're not. We can't leave them on the, because technically speaking, this might end up being the Moscow Federation with St. Petersburg as is no longer as now St. Peterstan or something like that. That's a possibility. So I think that's the easiest way to get there. Whether it'll happen that way, we'll see. But considering 1991 and what we thought was possible at that point, I wouldn't rule it out.
yeah, I mean,
My 2 cents.
it's pretty shocking that they're still on there. So
So this is a question from Connie Kelly. The cluster bombs are the cluster bombs now in use, and are they making a difference?
they're here. And I saw an interview with head of Army Command South in Ukraine, who says that they have received the cluster bombs, but they have not started using them. Now, that was an interview that was conducted, I would bet, within the last 24, 36 hours. So if that has changed, it's not been reported yet, but they are here. And, I've had long conversations with people who are very clued in with this issue, and there is hope that they're going to make a significant difference because the place has already been mined extensively. So, one of the things that cluster bombs are good with is actually blowing up, ironically, blowing up other munitions, so people are afraid of like the bomblets that drop in cluster bombs. Well, those bomblets are going to blow up a bunch of mines and open up minefields so that the Ukrainian forces can go through them relatively safely. And one last thing I want to mention about the cluster bomb thing is that, a couple of things I want to mention about the cluster bomb thing. First and foremost, the Ukrainians asked for them. They're only going to use them domestically within their own land, so they're not going to use them irresponsibly because this is their land. And I mean, part of this whole conflict is the fact that they want sovereign land. They want their country, so they wouldn't poison it just as they're gaining it. And secondly, you have to understand the history of Ukraine. This has been the forefront of conflict for hundreds of years, and it is littered with munitions. I mean, I remember coming here in 2001 all the way up until now, and every couple of months, I would say, rough guesstimate, somebody would either find or they would be killed by munitions dating back to the Second World War. This place, because of the nature of this land and how fought over it has been, is already littered with munitions. So I am no fan of cluster munitions. I have seen them and their awful result in places like Afghanistan and Syria, and they're awful weapons. But it might be the best weapon for the Ukrainians now, today. And look, they're going to document when they use them. They're not just going to leave that stuff lying around. They'll come back afterwards and clean it up. But right now, this is an existential threat. And as awful as those weapons are, including also with like depleted uranium rounds, which we've also given them, I'm not a fan of either of those. But when you're fighting for your very life and your very existence, and also they're a sovereign nation asking for these weapons, so I hate them, but I hope they do their job.
Right. Real quick, we've been talking a lot about the use of these weapons and what the next big strategic push that they're talking about doing. And Zaluzhny, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, so far, the vast majority of like what he's been able to accomplish is extraordinary. Never mind the fact that this Russian 6-day or we're going to take Kiev in a weekend thing failed miserably and has been grinding because of this guy pushing back on a much bigger force and doing it very, very well, pulling them in, letting them exhaust themselves, wiping them out, doing it again and again like a Pez dispenser. They're going to write about Zaluzhny's military strategies for decades and who he worked with in the NATO command in the U.S. that he was talking to, but he's definitely one of the biggest people pushing, even the lightning strikes that they had against and regaining Kherson and Kharkiv. He said, and I quote, "As soon as I have the means, I'll do something. I don't give a damn. Nobody will stop me." When he was asked about liberating Russian-occupied Crimea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. As soon as I have the means, I'll do something. I don't give a damn. Nobody will stop me. And by the way,
Zaluzhny is not.
He's not messing around.
You got to understand his character. He got to understand his character. He is an amazing guy. He really. I think Zelensky has been an amazing leader for this nation on the political front. But Zaluzhny is an incredible military leader and also just a really good, solid guy. He's also just he takes care of his troops. He doesn't throw them away needlessly. He has compassion for them, for their families. He's attended God knows how many funerals. He's a very, very strong leader and a really good guy. So when he says something like that, you better listen. You better listen. He's going to go for it. He's going to go for it. And he wouldn't. The other thing is he's not a flippant guy or who makes challenges or makes statements without something to back it up. So let's see what happens.
I think the measure of what he said, the measure of what he said really does stand out. And I think it was the same interview. I'm fairly certain, but he says they asked if Ukraine would use weapons against Russia, like launching strikes into Russia, and this was his response, which I thought was the language of it is very specific. This is our problem, and we have to decide how to kill this enemy. In a war, you can and should kill on its territory. If our partners are afraid to use their weapons, we will kill with ours, but only as much as is necessary.
Yeah.
And
they've been building up. A lot of industry to supply themselves with their own weapons, and they are developing weapons based on the technology, probably based on the technology we've given them. But they're no slouches of their own.
Nope.
So they've been developing these weapon systems where they can attack Russia. Yeah.
Strategically, if I may, the fact that he says this and is more of a reason why Russia would want Ukraine to join NATO, because NATO countries will not attack another country that would result in a greater fight without consulting the other ones. But if Ukraine's not in NATO, the chances of them attacking it, let's say Putin falls and there's a big mix up in Moscow and nobody knows who runs the joint, it's way higher chance that Ukraine goes, you know what? From the Ukrainian standpoint, a couple 100 miles into Russia is kind of our territory. Why don't we just take some of that? Absolutely could. Would they? Probably not. But the point is, if they're in NATO, they definitely wouldn't. If they're in NATO, if Ukraine joins NATO, we're talking about 91 borders, end of conversation. Whatever happens on the other side of that border will be a mess of Russia's own making. Yeah. But at this point, with him saying something like that, there is reason for Russia to hope that Ukraine joins NATO for that very reason. Because they'd have to consult all the other, hey, we're thinking about attacking Russia. And they'd go, no, you can't do that. You're in NATO. We're a defensive organization, and you can't cross that line. You want to help? Send some troops down to Georgia, and you can drive people back out of there. But that's it. That's on your own. But that's literally, this argument is the best argument for why Russia would want Ukraine in NATO, because they would have to consult the rest of us before they did any kind of offensive action into Russian territory. And I find that beautifully ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
let's.
are we close to a break?
Yes, we are. And Johnny Million has
Because
to take off.
we've got to talk. We got to talk about
questions
the
in our
proposed
chat here.
assassination attempts.
Yes, we do. We will talk about that on the other side of it. But Johnny Million has to take off before this next break. So,
all right, bud.
Float a question for us real quick, Johnny Million, from there, if you would. Or
yeah.
I don't know if
so
I'm
I'm going to upload the notepad file that I use. But I've got a question from Fred Bear. There are 2 days left on the grain deal. Does Phil have any ideas?
They've got to renew it. They'll have to renew it. So we'll see.
Erdogan has said
how that shakes out.
Yes, according to the AFP, Erdogan has said that Putin agreed to extend the grain agreement this morning at 7:31 a.m. That was reported at 7 a.m. this morning. So Erdogan, talk about what we were talking about earlier about that pressure that he has over Putin, but he has gotten them to extend the grain deal. So perfect kind of timing on that question. And Johnny Million, we'll miss you. You got to take off during this break.
Miss you too.
All right, and be back right after
Good
this.
seeing you, Johnny.
Johnny's going to post a couple more questions in there, and I can also farm the chat, and I have my
the
own for
file
Phil.
didn't work. Hang on. I'll send this over to you one at a time.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Got that one.
Excellent. And then
Korea.
Yep. See, BlackRock.
Fighter jets.
Tim Farrell, Johnny for Phil. There was a time early on when
BlackRock.
flying
I'll see you guys
jets.
soon.
Take care, Johnny. All the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Goodbye. All right, I will. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna re-up I'll rearrange. I'll shuffle everybody. And let's go to here.
Should Ukraine be lobbying? And yes. Quick answer.
Okay. And then, let's see, we'll bring him back in there. And then I'll take this. And fixing a couple things during this. There we go. And so we'll make this a little bigger. Oops. Cool. Okay. I'll transition this over. Give me 1 second, and we'll go like this. And then I got to fix one thing, and we'll get you out of there. Take out Gist 2. Oops. Okay. All right. Yeah, so this was from, I'll just show you in 1 second. Let me flip one name. There you go. And drag.
We're back in 15.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is the report from Kiev Post's Telegram channel this morning. President Recep.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together. Whether the weather is cloudy or sunny, I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you? Chugga chugga choo choo woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together. Whether the weather is cloudy or stormy, I will still be there in the morning.
nice.
I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Philip is showing part of his the happy ending. I guess he got a nesting doll of the band Kiss. Either he's got it for me as a gift, and that's a happy ending, or I find
Nope, that's all yours. When I'll carry this back to the States, and it's all yours. I was walking through the market, I saw it, I was like, oh, come on now.
Come on, that's great. Thank you so much. That's amazing. I can't
And
wait.
it's got
I
all
can't.
of them. It's got
And
all of
if I
them.
may, I can't wait for you to get back safely. Now, speaking of which,
that too.
and I think what's a good happy ending is what I just reported. This is from, like I said, from the Kiev Post. Erdogan has said that Putin will extend the grain agreement. That's definitely good news. Now, I have... it's so awesome.
And
Thanks,
I'm not
Phil.
surprised.
Yeah, not at all. Okay, so we do have more questions from the chat room, and I want to extend them to... let's see. Carlin Evans wants to, who's a member, thank you so much for being a member, asks about BlackRock rebuilding Ukraine. If you know anything about the investment by BlackRock and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, they signed an agreement. They've been in talks. The Kiev administration has been in talks with BlackRock for, I think, December of 22. Late December, December-ish 22, and then recently, they've had negotiations and more talks, and they've recently signed, some detailed plans, and I mean, somebody is going to have to clean this place up, and I get that BlackRock is, not the best. That's me being polite. But somebody's going to have to do it, and this is going to cost trillions of dollars. Now, I've seen the argument posed that because BlackRock is doing it, that they are in essence Ukraine, and that Ukraine is just selling itself out. Ukraine is not going to swap one colonial master for another.
Well, and also BlackRock is an investment group that invests like pension funds and large, swaths of money from all kinds of different places. The idea that they are like they're the equivalent of Elon Musk. It's so funny that the people who are talking about what you're talking about are the same people who, celebrate Elon Musk as a free spirit, even as he takes his billions and he purchases stuff for his own, turn them into his own personal toys. Whereas BlackRock is an investment group that handles swaths of money by giant groups. And any of those groups at any time could tell them to go pound sand and liquidate, and it would destroy BlackRock from within. It is not like, it's right up there with the WEF. At any point, anybody who goes to the World Economic Forum could just go, we're not going anymore. These people are defending Uyghur slave labor or something like that. And that would be that. It's not it's not permanent in any measure, and BlackRock is aware of that. Now, there's this too big to fail idea that I think people fear, and that's reasonable because once somebody gets so big, their money makes money anyways. But that should actually be more of a positive sign that they're investing in Ukraine because they see a future.
Yeah,
I think.
And again, I reiterate, somebody's going to have to do it. Somebody, and it's going to have to be a huge entity, whether governmental, non-governmental, or private enterprise. This country has been absolutely devastated. The scale of damage to this country is enormous. So somebody's going to have to do it. And, when you get up at that kind of levels, is there any company, any group in the world that doesn't have some issues, some baggage that they
on
carry
that scale?
You're
On that
scale,
nobody's ever going to be happy.
Come on.
That said,
and then
you got to keep an eye on them.
The last thing I'll...
Sure.
Yeah, no, sure. You have to keep an eye on them. And the last thing I will say about this is that, I mean, again, the Ukrainians have fought for their sovereignty, and they have lived as a colony for hundreds of years. There is no way that they are just going to, let themselves become a vassal state or, a kind of, bound
corporate
by another
interests.
colonial master, or
Right.
whether it's corporate interest or Brussels or Washington. They're not going to do it. I've heard so many stories of delegations coming over here and running into the Ukrainians and being like, well, we're giving you this and we're giving you that, so you got to dance to our tune. And they always get shut down real fast.
Right.
And the Ukrainians are like, no, that's not how that works. We're happy for your gifts. We're happy for your largesse, but we are not giving up our sovereignty after we've freaking lost, so many of
People.
our
Right.
Ukrainian lives, and
I will
our
say,
country's been ravaged.
there have been some, obviously this will be fodder for Fox News to go after BlackRock and stuff, because that's one of their favorite punching bags, like the IMF or the WEF. The WEF has gone after because they don't understand the IMF, so it's harder for them to go after the International Monetary Fund. They just say, oh, so enjoy a bank. That's all they can kind of think. But the World Economic Forum, everybody's sitting around talking, and people getting together and talking and trying to work out their differences without beating each other to a pulp. The Republicans seem to hate that. But I don't know how they're going to deal with it. So maybe this is why Roseanne was so upset with Zelensky this week, is because they by a vote of 241 to 2, with 65, with 3 abstaining or something like that, or what, the different groups. Christmas is now going to be on December 25th in Ukraine. They used to have it on the Russian day or whatever, and now they're going to have it the same day we have it in America. And that is either obviously they're declaring war on Christmas,
But
and
the
they just want to be
war on Christmas.
right. Well, that's what I said.
Christmas?
Obviously, the war on Christmas is going as bad in Ukraine as it is over here. We're going to lose that battle. We got to fight for it. So I just think I think that little turn was pretty hilarious in terms of the stories that we hear coming out of Russia all the time. And I'm sorry, not Russia. I'm kidding. So here's another question. There's a couple of these, and these are almost related. Connie Kelly asked this, and Biker98 asked this. He said, they said, should Ukraine be lobbing shells into Russia? And kind of related to that, could Ukraine acquire any Russian territory? I know my opinion. I'd like to hear yours.
As far as shelling Russia is concerned, yeah, absolutely, 100%. We, as somebody who's been under fire from the Russians, a little, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, is fine with me. And if the Russians cry about it, well, then let them cry. As far as holding ground and taking it and annexing it, that's not what the Ukrainians want to do.
Nope.
There's one outside caveat in that they might look at strategically trying to annex something around Rostov so that Rostov could no longer be used as a staging area. But that is such a far-flung possibility.
Yeah, and it's more military. It's more like the anti-Putin.
It would be
Russians.
A strategic maneuver.
Yeah, doing something like that. So
it would be a strategic B for the purpose of annexing territory because I believe this is part of my heritage and this is actually Ukrainian land and we're going to seize it back. None of that.
Johnny has a question in here. I can't tell from who it was written from. I think it's Tim, but it says there was a time early on where you and Hal were against supplying fighter jets. Is that still the case?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, if they want them, let's give them to them.
Right.
My initial concern about the F-16 in particular was that it's a very complicated system, and it's not, and it also comes with a whole range of support measures. There's a whole thing that has to be. You have to send guys over there that are capable of repairing it, or maintaining it, and keep the thing flying. But I've gotten to the point where if the Ukrainians ask us for anything short of nukes, we should pretty much just give it to them because.
Well, yeah, I would say that in the first few months, because it was again, this had just happened and the response had to be measured. We are well over a year and change into this, and so the issues I think we worried the most about at that time was that the Russians, in an attempt to get air dominance, would clash with U.S. airplanes or whatever, something that had just that still had markings on it from the U.S. and ratchet this stuff up. And also the difference between F-22 opposed to like F-16s, which are older kit, quite frankly. They're just older. They're almost trainers by comparison now. They were a plot point in the most recent Tom Cruise the Mission, or not the Mission Impossible, the Top Gun sequel.
Top Gun?
Because they found an old one in a hangar and he had to fly it again. And it was the same plane he flew in the first one. And it was like, the fact that he knew how to fly it was a plot point. We're out of time. Love you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Philip Bittner. Thank you, Johnny Million. See you guys next week.
Right.
Take care of yourself. All right. I ran out of time. It was so fast. I don't even know what to do. All right.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
So one of the reports that I'm seeing, and thank you, Chicago, so much.
Thanks, Chicago.
Yep. One of the things I've seen a little bit was that there was going to be a kind of troops-based tactic in the beginning of the counteroffensive that they were talking about, and they lost to move back to longer range stuff, and part of it was because they didn't have the longer range stuff that they needed, so they were if the timing of the ground hardening and not being wet and blah 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 all lined up with them needing to do it by foot, essentially, and now. The cluster munitions in this have a lot to do with we're just going to do, they're bombing depots and they're blowing up equipment, in a strategy that worked and drove what happened in Kharkiv. So in this one, the New York Times is saying they're kind of watered down, overly simplistic version of stuff too. So that's part of the issue. Because I find by the time it reaches the New York Times or the Washington Post, a lot of times it gets filtered so many times that it becomes cartoonishly oversimplified on all fronts, good and bad, around this stuff, around war, because of them trying to measure their readers' attitude in the story. That in the first 2 weeks of the counteroffensive, we lost up to 20% of the military equipment delivered to the front, and we being the Ukrainians. Already in the following weeks, because this is from Ukrainian Telegram channel, already in the following weeks, the figure has dropped to 10% thanks to a new tactic to wear down the Russians, which is one of the other things they call the Russians, with artillery and long-range missiles instead of the previous constant assaults. However, this tactic led to a slowdown in the offensive. Even if you looked at the latest military assistance being negotiated, this is exactly art. Projectiles and long-range missiles are all that is needed. This is important to know and understand the situation on the front. So the sort of ongoing aspect of this, I'm going to go back to here. Oh, I got a translation. That is take this off and yeah. That makes sense. And I know you got to go, but
yeah,
there has been a ratchet
I will keep this for you.
Oh, that's so awesome.
I will keep that for you.
Thank you so much. And that's it's interesting.
Stupid war is over.
The costumes that they have on costumes in about